Okay, let's get started. Today's talk is going to be slightly different. I'm not going to be capping it at 15 minutes or having somebody join me on a conference. It's really just going to be some of my sort of meanderings and imparting some of my experience on kind of a big topic, and which is one is can Elon Musk actually code? And the second one is how much does he actually know about AI? So we might just do some Googling together, but I'll be imparting some of my sort of experience and knowledge on the topic. This is probably quite controversial, but I do think it's a question worth asking because the reason for this video is earlier this morning, as Elon Musk's tweets become increasingly more erratic, and I'm not attacking the guy, he has been kind of called out again with regards to his position on ML, AI, and AGI, and this one was particularly um, particularly crude. So we'll walk through that example as I do screen share, and then I'll talk a bit about what my thoughts are on that. So let's just quickly jump into the screen share and I'll show you what I mean, and then I'll start to impart my point of view and what I've seen in the industry and where I think sort of Elon sits in the spectrum of sort of expertise. A quick bit of background, if you don't know already, is I'm head of DevOps. You can think of that as like automation, infrastructure, cloud, all of that sort of stuff in IT. And then I'm also very big into AI, so ML and neural networks, right? So it's something that's been close to me for a long time, and I've been working at it in a long time. So I think my point of view will be quite valid to an extent. And hopefully, criticism, put them in the YouTube comments and correct me if I've said something that's wrong. But let's have a look anyway, and we'll just sort of dig in. So I'm going to do screen share, and give me 2 seconds. Okay, so let's just jump over to Twitter and just look through these tweets, right? So this is the offending tweet, but we'll just quickly look, I just want to clear up, right? Because I am a fan, I'm a massive fan for at least, say, 12, 13 years, longer than most, before Elon was big. Resonates a lot of stuff that he says with me, particularly things like first principles and mixing disciplines and feedback and whatnot. So let's just have a quick look at these tweets just to make sure I'm not sort of cherry picking, right? So the guy is he tweets quite technically with regards to sort of Falcon Heavy, F9 rocket. So he's there. So he's acting as a good example for a CEO by talking technically, and he's kind of talks with regards to the coronavirus preparedness for Tesla opening the plant. So I'm kind of in the middle there. I'm on the fence. I don't agree or disagree, but that's a scandal in itself. Then there's a bit more about sharing. So their work with NASA, which will be the first to put Americans back into space in about 2 weeks' time. So again, this is all very good CEO mannerisms that you would expect, right? Even with his sort of competitor, Tory Bruno. I actually met this guy in America. He's the head of ULA. You can think of him as one of Elon Musk's direct competitors. So they he's playing ball. He's playing nicely, a bit more nicely than Jeff Bezos, which is good. So it's good to see. So the guy's not as erratic as the media might make out. He performs admirably as any other CEO would, and he replies to tweets, which is unlike most celebrities do. So very good so far. But the problem kind of comes at this point, right? So it's like this is the offending tweet, and I'm going to give a wee bit more background as we go. But why is this a problem? Right? It's like fine, Facebook sucks. It's quite funny. I kind of laugh. Don't really care. But there's something deeper here, right? So people may be aware that he tweeted like a year ago something like, if I disagree with science, choose science, right? And then when he kind of, let's say people assumed he was misinterpreting coronavirus statistics, they just retweeted him the tweet that he made, basically saying you're a hypocrite, right? Now that I was on the fence because there's just too much data for me to parse at the moment and make a concerned decision, so I just remain conservative. In this area, however, it's kind of where I kind of step in, because for me, the criticism I've got of him isn't that he just said Facebook sucks. It's more that if anybody knows the guy, from all of his conferences and motivational talks, he consistently says, seek feedback, seek critical feedback. Critical feedback is gold. You should embrace critical feedback and find it wherever you can, because it'll make you better, which is a really good piece of advice. But we rarely see that on Twitter and in real life. In fact, he seems to take any form of criticism really personally. Now, am I calling him a hypocrite? No. I'll let you decide for that. But what kind of struggles with me is this guy, Jerome, right? So he's clearly quite crude, right? So he's basically saying, me and my buddies don't think you know anything about AI, and I think I can talk on behalf of the AI community. Well, I'm the AI community as well, and I'm not sure I agree. I don't know, and that's why I'm doing this talk. This last point's kind of valid as well. So AGI isn't a thing today, but it might be in the future, right? So he's essentially saying you don't know what you're talking about, right? In fact, that's exactly what he said. So rather than Elon Musk, kind of like, he could have said, well, I have built this game and I have done that and done this, and here's my source code. Also, Facebook sucks. But I could see he's done this for comical effect as well, right? It's quite funny. But the point is, this is now becoming a reoccurring trend and pattern, right? So it's like, now that's kind of forcing us to ask the question a bit more deeply. And you'll see that I've actually done a wee bit of digging already. So I drilled down to see. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get his source code. So I'm not going to rip the ROM open and try and find comments from him. If somebody does have the source code, please drop a link in the comment section, and I'll do a video and I'll actually walk through his code contributions. It used to be somewhere on the web, but I can't find it anymore. So we know he created this. He worked as a developer on this game, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs 2, and he also worked on a game called, I think, Blastar, and another one. So he created a game in BASIC, right? So we say Elon Musk game, and the very first thing you're going to get is, I think, Blastar, or the game he created in BASIC, right? So if we drill down, we can see talks about right. So yeah, there's too much media reporting and not enough actual. So if I say Elon Musk source code, right, let's have a look a bit deeper, right? See if we can find anything. So there we go. Blastar was definitely a game, and I think that was like when he was 12. So that's BASIC, right? So BASIC is basic, it's procedural. And I think there was another one called like Rostar or Rockstar or Lodestar. I think Lodestar was the game. So if I just quickly, this keyboard, I suck with it. Load, because it's like a small one. Lodestar, or maybe I think it was game. I was going to say Mega CD, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah, okay, so it's Sega Mega CD, right? So Sega CD. So is there any way that we can get the source code? I'm not going to drill down and waste too much time. But he worked on this game, right? So this was another game that he worked on, and so Sega CD is written in C++, I believe, and it's compiles from assembler. So you can actually do both, right? So today, where people might use Unreal Engine or Unity Engine, and then use C# to do the nitty-gritty stuff, or C++ if you use an Unreal. Back in the day, you would use assembler, so you'd use C++, and then you drill into assembler if you wanted to do anything like particularly specific, which C++ couldn't manage. But it's all assembler at the end of the day anyway. Okay, so we know that he worked on this game. We know that he worked on Blastar. So this game is, 1994. So that we're talking like a long time ago, right? So 3.5 decades almost, 2.5 decades almost. So the question is, like, does he code today? And I don't see evidence of that. In fact, the only thing that we did see is some kind of HTML that he did, right? So the first point is, just because you could code before doesn't mean you can code today. And I'm going to come off of this, and you can see me as I talk a bit more. So what I mean by that is there's a divide that I see in my line, in my career, which is the open source community, and open source coding, community coding, GitHub, Kaggle. That, say, the past 10 years coincide with the emergence of fintech and faster, more sophisticated, rapid deployable products and companies, right? Before that, it was much more regimented, less creativity, significantly less creativity. It's much more about standards and protocols, right? So just because you could code certain things working for a company, they probably give you a template and say, here's your object template, and here's how we expect you to create an asset, right? Whereas today it's a completely different world. And so my first inclination is the guy, and we'll get to the AI part, is the guy deviated in his career, right? Like most people do, like I'm doing at the moment, which is, once you've been a developer for so long, most people eventually don't want to be developers forever. They want to move into management and leadership, which most do, right? But some wish to code forever. I wish to code forever, so that's why I do both. But when you move into that lane, things move so fast. If you're out of the game for 5 years, sure, you'll have the basic computer scientist understanding if you have that. If you indeed have that, such as general things such as memory pointers, instantiating objects, working methods and things for a given procedural language. But that's about it. And libraries move so fast, given object-oriented language, libraries move and evolve so fast, and frameworks which were used 10 years ago are dead today. There's a very good Steve Jobs YouTube video where he's called out by somebody in the crowd saying, why did you use Java and not this for one of his products? And he makes a very good argument, which is he looks at the longevity of something. So there's that part, right? So there's the part which is we're saying maybe he used to code, but he doesn't code anymore, and he hasn't coded for a very long time. So what the hell is he doing talking about TensorFlow and TPUs and so I'm trying to think of some specific, because he doesn't he skims, right? So he essentially he never goes deep enough. He only and sometimes, and even when he does go deep, you can see he's clearly something that he's listened to one of his employees tell him. So this is part of my second suspicion, which is any of the technical knowledge that he's regurgitating on Twitter is not from him. It's secondhand news, right? So somebody's maybe sat down and he's got one of the chief engineers to talk him through why he decided not to use certain features in their Tesla model. And Elon Musk is absorbing that, not fully understanding it, right? So I'm holding him to his own standard of evaluation, which is to know something, you have to do it. I mean, he made this comparison 15 years ago where he talked about levels of knowledge, right? It's like how deep down you can go, right? And what I'm saying is his level of knowledge that he was holding, to this elitist standard where I don't accept anybody who can't explain something at all different levels right to the bottom. I'm suspicious that he no longer operates at that, which is pretty much human, right? So it's like very few people can maintain the lowest level of depth in multiple disciplines, right? So like rocketry, thermodynamics, software programming, AI, things to do with digging tunnels, right? So there's Neuralink, right? So there's Neuralink, like I don't know, like 20 years of neurosurgery or 20 years of neuroscience to understand. I did a couple of years of neurocomputing. Cool. I have the basics. That's about it. And so it begs the question, right? So is he just allowing the media and playing into this I'm a Da Vinci and not really speaking out and saying, actually, I'm not. This is the level of knowledge that I actually know. A lot of the stuff comes from my team, right? That would be better. I'd appreciate it if he said that. And that's my suspicion. So that's where I think he actually is. So to recap, before I move on to the AGI, I'm saying the guy used to code. He's got a good understanding of coding practices, contributed to at least 3 games we know. And when we dug deeper, I saw he did a bit of Java for dinosaurs and something. And the other game was probably C++, and he's done basic. So he's at least produced a product or contributed to a product in 3 different languages. That's good, right? And we know that one of them was strictly procedural, and the other 2 was early age object oriented. So that's pretty good. That's pretty heady. But again, when you were building games back in those days, or when you were just producing to any software code, it wasn't like you were using the internet and you were using creative thinking. You're working through manuals, you're given templates. Japanese developers, when they developed Game Boy games, they would have on the walls like maps of this bunch of assembler code, which nobody really understood. And they would just roll that to build their asset, right? So they'd say, right, this is start from this template. This is how you build your asset, and so it is entirely possible. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is the case, but it's entirely possible that he built these games without low-level, long-term computer science experience. Now, before I move on, the only thing I would counter myself, and again, I want you to maybe take part in the conversation, is he did code up his own stuff for I think X.com and the PayPal predecessor, right? So we know that he did work heavy hours working on web design, right? Did he do the database behind that? Did he really manage the entire payment system? I don't know, but the guy's a workaholic, so it's not unreasonable to think that the guy is actually very good at coding. And if that's the case, then it would follow that his knowledge on AGI and artificial intelligence is well grounded, right? Because there's artificial intelligence. You do need a background in mathematics, or at least an understanding. But an overwhelming amount is coding, right? So most people that most people that work on ML products, they're not creating brand new statistical algorithms, right? They're not creating statistical formulae or new proofs or new methods, right? They're using out the box stochastic gradient descent, BVRMs, any kind of, my mind's going a bit blank now, but there's the series of libraries in Python of different machine learning methods that you can apply, which relate to specific mathematical concepts, right? So I think one of them might be like feed forward, right? Really like to get a specific concrete example to talk through, but I'll do that later. So essentially there's a bunch of libraries that you can pick. I mean, I'm not every day going through the mathematics and working, creating brand new proofs from scratch so I can then build a new machine learning algorithm. Most people are just taking them out of the box and they're using something like scikit-learn and an instruction manual and understanding, tweaking these parameters does this. And so that's the case, right? So if he is indeed good at coding, so let's summarize that. I know I said I summarize, but I'm going to just cap it and say he's probably good at coding. He's probably at least so we can state for sure that he is not an amateur, but we can't state for sure he's an expert. What we can state is the guy's done a fair bit of coding. Okay, next point. He's done a fair bit of coding. He did a physics degree, so he's probably quite comfortable with maths, like me. So that means he's got a foot in the door. Now, does he actively roll out machine learning algorithms? I highly doubt it. I think his team does. So the question is that knowledge a strong enough basis for him to be an expert? Like, has he effectively ticked the bare minimum boxes that he needs to tick in order to be an expert in AI. I think to an extent there's some of that, right? Because he understands, if he's done that code, he understands working with memory, he understands runtime issues. He has talked about using Microsoft Visual Studios. He just talked about. He said it's buggy, and I think he said issues at compilation time or something, right? So again, it's hard, right? Because it's like, so why do I even care about this? Well, because ultimately the stakes, right? So it's like if I employ lots of people, so part of my job is, so not employ, is to vet, right? So I bring people into my team, and then I decide if I want them or not. And so I wouldn't waste this much time worrying, because I should be able to see it pretty quickly by asking some well-prepared, precise questions and understand the depth of their knowledge. The problem is no one's questioning Elon Musk on this, and even if they did, I strongly doubt he'd answer, right? Because most people need a little bit of revision and prep to make sure that they're ready for certain questions, like how would you do a bubble sort? So it's hard, right? So it's hard. So we can't rule out he's a charlatan, right? But what we can say is, if he is a charlatan, he's only a charlatan in specific areas. It's probably not going to be in coding. I think he can code from what we're saying. So he's done games, he's worked on building and designing a website, and he's made some observations which may or may not be his, which seem reasonable. Okay, now comes the AI part. Is it fair to say that AI is a risk and that we should regulate and that AGI is going to come? Well, so this is where he doesn't show his AI knowledge and expertise, because he's reasoning using physics principles, not using knowledge of modern day TensorFlow or PyTorch or Spark frameworks. What he's done is he said, in his mind, which we've seen, he said, if it's advanced this far today, or if games like he uses have become this good within 20 years, then I predict, even what he says, a constant growth, not an exponential growth, that within 100 years, AI should be beyond us, computer games should be beyond our, we shouldn't be able to tell if they're real or not. So he's just extrapolating, different rates of growth, and then worrying about that. So, but that's not how the real world works, right? So, I mean, if we look at just like energy growth over time, it is a straight line, but there's bumps and curves, right? So, like if somebody, which they did, the predictions made during the emergence of nuclear energy, especially in the 50s, was some of the most amazing and beautiful, nostalgic, futuristic style. So nostalgic for us today, but futuristic style and visions that they had. The city of tomorrow, the future of tomorrow, the moon colony of tomorrow. But they were completely off the mark, right? And so the energy calculations that most predicted we would be using today still woefully short, right? So scientists make this mistake all the time. But AI and software development isn't exactly science, right? It's more engineering, because you're not actively modifying the laws. We're all working on sort of von Neumann architecture. Very few people are working on biocomputing or memristors, which I'd like to see. Most people are working on silicon, so the rules are set, right? And so it's very likely that we fall into troughs and depths, and we fall into more AI winters. So for those who don't know, an AI winter is this idea that you expect AI to boom and to take over the world, and then you hit a wall. And debatably, there's been 4 already, so this might be the 5th. And we are beginning to see the signs that is indeed the case, right? So we all thought with the emergence of neural networks, it was done, because we thought pattern recognition, a real self-learning system. But the problem is it doesn't know how to learn. It can learn to do one thing good with limitations. So that's amazing for the practical applications it's going to give us. But there's going to be limitations. There's going to be a wall if we follow that reason of thinking, which is what Elon Musk is not following. So he's just like going like this, like a line or a curve. He's saying it's either going to be like this or it's going to be like this. So either way, at this time, it's going to be beyond our control. What machine learning engineers, like this guy, a Facebook engineer, is saying is, no, that's not how it actually works. Actually, we're running into problems right now. I mean, that thing he retweeted about hate speech and memes. So the Facebook guy, if you look at his Twitter page, they're working on a new algorithm to detect hate speech and memes, right? That's really hard because you've got an image and text, and you have to then understand cultural references and things. So it's, they boast, if you publish an academic paper saying we've hit 47% accuracy, it's bullshit, right? So they're not even 40%, they're probably 30%, which is whatever, but they're nowhere near doing that. And so he himself and his team are running into this problem every day, right? So if you've been kicked from Facebook for something that you did which you thought was completely fine, then you know the limitations of AI that we have. So this is where we are. So we're in the state where it seems that Elon Musk is interpreting using other skills that he has rather than his AI knowledge. So in summary, I know I've gone on quite a lot with these 2 points. First point is he probably can code. Second point is he probably doesn't know much about AI. And so the knowledge that he gets about AI is from his engineers. But that's still good knowledge. But if we hold him to his same principles, his knowledge is surface knowledge. It's knowledge that he's learned and experienced from his engineers, but very quickly that muscle memory will go because he never did it himself, right? So an example might be one of his engineers may have said, we thought that we could automate the production of feature generation. So for a car, they need to see that's a signpost, that's a bird, that's a dog. And they maybe thought originally that they could have a machine that could just create the labels, but they realized it's too hard. We need humans, which is actually the case. So they do need humans to go through video footage and help cover those edge cases. So that process could be quite deep, right? Like, why is it we need humans, and what's actually happening under the covers, like this labeling, and if the humans are labeling, does that not mean then that they're not, they've only got time to label 100 a minute or whatever? So does that then mean that this is always going to be a weak spot for the system because everything else is automated except these human parts, and these human parts are encoded into this system, therefore these human parts will be the weak spot? So that's me just showing some knowledge that I have. Does Elon Musk know that? Probably. It's still quite surface. But as we get lower and lower, I strongly doubt he's going to be able to answer those questions. Even things such as like runtime of these models, deployment. If we saw when he did his neural network talk for Neuralink, he immediately got defensive against people who mentioned that they had a degree. And he said, don't mention that you came from this university. We don't care. It's like, it's good. I'm happy to hear that because I'm also anti-elitist. But it does seem a defensive mechanism as well. So this is, again, you came on this channel and you listened to me do some ramblings and meanderings, and a lot of what I've said may be subject to review. However, what we can say is that his contribution to AI is valuable from his team, but his contribution of his comments towards AI should definitely be taken with a grain of salt. I would rank him alongside the likes of Steven Pinker, people who are highly skilled and highly intellectual in certain areas, but don't produce AI code daily, right? They're not contributing to the PyTorch library. They're not turning over inference models. They have a background which is strongly useful, but only so far, right? And so this is where I think we are. And why did I take, I don't know, however long it is to do this, is we will see this become more and more of an issue, because in AI right now there are problems when we think about things such as like military invention and military application. Then there's the financial side. So we know that AI is a threat today for people who have protected characteristics. If you're, gender, race, age, background, disability, we know that in a given situation, AI will always disadvantage existingly disadvantaged people. So we know it's an issue. Does that apply to the future as well? Does it mean that future super intelligent AGI would also disadvantage the humanity? Like, would it also apply things that are not in our best interest? Well, that remains to be seen. But what we can say is high level abstractive tweets and passing statements have no value, right? It's just because he says, oh, the AI will take over the world, or Google is a threat because they contain all of the best engineers, is not super helpful, because it's not, there's no granularity behind it, and there's very little hands-on modern day experience behind that, right? So he just doesn't fully know. So that's kind of where I am in my mind. And we came along for this journey. That's where we are. I want you to probably, if you can, give me some feedback in the comments. I'll do another video as well. If I get enough comments and people say that, no, that's bullshit what you're talking about, then I'll definitely address them and dig deeper. But for now, thank you for listening, and do share back your thoughts and ideas. And if you manage to find any of these source code, link them in the comments, and we could do another video on that. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you at the next 15-minute podcast.